Welcome to Italian Innovators. I'm Luca Cottini, and today I'm in the company of Cinzia Zuffada, Associate Chief Scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA, and President of the Italian Scientists and Scholars in North America Foundation, ISSNAF. Dr. Zuffada received her doctorate in electrical engineering at the University of Pavia and has been a recipient of numerous awards, including the Magellan Award for Outstanding Senior Management at JPL, the NASA Medal for Outstanding Leadership, the Knighthood of the Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from the prestigious Collegio Ghislieri in Pavia. It would be hard for me to summarize her scientific work, but we'll have a chance to discuss it later together. What I can say now is that Dr. Zuffada has acquired international recognition for her work on the development of the technique of GPS reflectometry, first introduced for oceanography as GPS ocean reflection, and most recently applied to the dynamic mapping of wetlands. Dr. Zuffada made key contributions to demonstrating the feasibility of the GPS altimetry measurement from fixed site and airplane. Thanks for accepting my invitation. It's really an honor to have you in the show.
Thank you, Luca, for having me. It is my honor and my pleasure.
So today we'll explore the story of an Italian woman at NASA, the cultural soil and the impact of your scientific work, as well as the network of Italian scientists and scholars in North America. And I want to start from your story first. What moved you from Pavia to California, and how did you arrive at NASA? So where being a woman helped you or put you in a situation of disadvantage?
Well, my first visit to California was on a NATO CNR, the Italian Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche, fellowship for 1 year to be spent at Caltech in preparation for an academic career in Pavia, which I started upon my return. But that year in California opened my professional horizons and introduced me to a universe of possibilities which I did not know existed. I did not realize it immediately, though, but academic life felt too static after a while. So I had kept in touch with the man whom I later married, an Australian nuclear physicist who was also working at Caltech at the time. And he helped me confront major life choices, including imagining my professional trajectory. And because he is an outsider, he was able to look at how things work in Italy that I could not have seen so crisply as an insider. Eventually, I left my researcher position at the University of Pavia, moved to the US. It took a while to land at NASA JPL because my network was very small to begin with, and there was plenty of competition. What put me at a disadvantage was primarily not having attended the university in the US. Not so much in terms of the education, but rather because of the connections that are established through that experience. Nobody knew where Pavia was, so I had no pedigree, which is worth a lot in the United States. And like all immigrants, I was limited in my verbal abilities compared to my abilities in Italian. And so it took me a while to gain confidence even about myself. Being a small woman with an accent did not help me in a male-dominated field. In my first work experience was in a small company in Santa Monica, working for the Department of Defense. I think it was a very humbling experience. I remember very stressful times and self-doubt. I was going through many changes in life all at once, and I had left all my anchors behind. it seemed that nobody had familiarity with Italian culture, that canvas, that richness that we built through our education, our own experience in life that comes from being in a place, and that constitutes our identity. So I felt lonely. I persevered, though, and gradually developed support among our sponsors in the US Air Force and then the US Navy, basically because I was dependable. Interestingly, I was hired at JPL by a woman who took a chance on me, perhaps because somebody else had taken a chance on her years earlier. And I find that people who take a chance and make choices that are not easy, not the easy way out, impress me really very much. And I am very, very thankful to them.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story. And in your recent Lectio Magistralis at the Collegio Ghislieri, you also had a chance to talk about your story, and you talked about the importance and fascination of observing our human questions from the external perspective of space. What do we gain in observing ourselves and our questions from the outside, not only as at a scientific level, but also at a personal and cultural level, which is something you hinted to earlier?
Yes, the vantage point of space gives a person a global perspective. And in my lecture, I wanted to tell the audience that it can be the same perspective of a historian, not just a historian of human history solely, or perhaps a geographer, if one looks at the universe, depending on what you prefer. There can be other perspectives. For example, take our planet. We have all read of the changes in its climate and the necessity for humans to make changes and adapt. Understanding what is happening starts with observing, making sound measurements and characterizing processes. So if you think of the earth as a big organism, say a patient, if you want to describe its state of health, a doctor would do a physical examination and then there would be blood and other tests to diagnose a condition. So by making measurements from satellites in space, that is by remote sensing, we test our patient over time and everywhere and collect a lot of data about its state. This is really the first step. Then we need to develop models to interpret this data suitable for such a complex interconnected system. Eventually, we need to be able to predict changes that are going to occur with a level of confidence and with uncertainties that will be acceptable to those who need to make decisions that impact our lives. So I find it difficult to separate culture from science because of basically the notion of knowledge. Understanding things comprehensively really helps me find my place in the universe, so to speak, make sense of how things are interconnected, those that are impacted by humans in a broad sense, and ultimately define us as human beings. We are economic subjects. There are haves and have-nots. We are consumers, citizens, all of these things. I have come to feel comfortable with many different people in many different places. I really like being able to find commonalities. For example, between Lombardy, where I was raised, in Melbourne, Australia, which I visit periodically with my husband.
So how did your external perspective and background as an Italian help you navigate and interpret the American scientific community?
Well, the scientific community in the US is a real melting pot. And even 35 years ago, there were so many foreign students and faculty at American universities that one did not feel an oddity. That means that people are very patient with newcomers, and this helps to establish collaborations. Back then, there were no contacts between my research group at the University of Pavia and any other groups in the US. So I had no way of leveraging existing relationships at the very beginning. The world was not as interconnected as it is today. And it took me about 10 years before I succeeded at collaborating with other scientists, and by then my work grew in visibility and impact. So I cannot quite say what of or how my being Italian helped me, other than with my tenacity, perhaps, I had learned how to postpone gratification from a long education path, going through a lyceum plus a laurea in electrical engineering, plus a few years spent at the university as a precaria. So they helped me, being tenacious.
Thank you. And I also wanted to ask you like a contemporary question about the recent news of the arrival of Perseverance on Mars. What does it represent for you?
Well, I am not a planetary scientist, so I'm not personally animated by the specific pursuit of Perseverance, which is really the first leg of a multi-stage program designed to bring back samples of the Martian soil to look for signs of what might have been life there at that place 3.5 billion years ago. However, the entire enterprise is absolutely fascinating. Just consider its complexity and the many aspects of risk that need to be all controlled. There are so many things that can go wrong. They all need to come together for this to be successful. So as a feat of human achievement, it is really awesome. And thinking about the thousands of my colleagues who have worked tirelessly to make it happen with no delay, particularly with the limitations that we are now having with the COVID situation, are just beyond heroic.
Well, in your work at NASA, you are located really in between agencies and universities. What are, in your opinion, their respective contributions or specificities in the creation of original scientific research?
Well, agencies like NASA have the role of conceiving and developing programs and implement them by competitive processes, make sure that the programs are successful, the deliverables are met. They have goals that flow down from their congressional mandates, and ultimately they are answerable to the public. Universities play a role in education and research. They are independent of agencies that might be their sponsors at times. Ideas, original thinking are the purview of universities and other research organizations, since not all research happens in academia. While agencies tap into the intellectual resources both to inform their programs and realize them. For example, in my job at JPL, I work in the Office of the Chief Scientist to help shape the internal investment in research and technology development designed to keep JPL successful in the future. So I need to be on top of all that the community is doing and understand the strategic needs of my institution to make sure that we choose the best proposals to receive funding. Our community of researchers is in many ways comparable to academics. And in fact, we do collaborate with many universities. But at JPL, people do not teach. And some work partly on flight projects and partly on original research projects. And at JPL, this mix of responsibilities help stimulate new ideas, people's creativity by exchanges between scientists who are pursuing a quest, who are after a scientific investigation, and technology experts and engineers who are able to think on how to build the right system or instrument that can get there, that can get that question answered. Universities operate a bit differently by their own design, since they are organized in departments and typically they operate separately from one another, although they can also collaborate amongst departments. So often this means that the basic science or technology development is the purview of academia. And the boundaries are pushed on new ideas, first of a kind, the proof of concept, things that results in publications. Agencies like NASA are interested in programs that are founded on more applied research, on integrations across discipline specialties, putting together a lot of different concepts and skills. So the concepts of creativity and originality has a different meaning at this system level.
Well, following up on what you're saying, it might seem obvious working in a place like NASA, but what does innovation consist of in your field?
Well, it can mean a lot of things because of the scales that I have talked about. So at NASA, JPL in particular, we pride ourselves as being the first to do a project XYZ. So we do not do a series of the same XYZ in an operational sense. That's the responsibilities of other places. So every time there is something new in a project, it has to be different from the previous version. Perhaps because we are after getting more science, answering more difficult questions, or reaching a destination with fewer resources, or lasting longer in space, and so on and so forth. This is one kind of innovation. Often it is obtained incrementally by the collective ingenuity of many people. But there is also disruptive innovation. Typically, this is referred to technologies that allow for a real change of paradigm, a big change that pushes the state of the art or human knowledge.
Now, Italy, and I want to bring your attention to Italy now, is really a key player in space research, not only for the active collaborations that the Agenzia Spaziale Italiana, the Italian Space Agency, has with NASA and ESA, the European Space Agency, which is attested in the presence of several Italian astronauts in recent missions. And we talked about Samantha Cristoforetti in another episode of the show, but also for Italy's growing space industry, especially in the area of Piedmont. The Turin-based Thales Alenia is a leading company in the sector. Can you tell us more about it, and what is the impact of Italy's space industry in the global context?
Yes, Italy indeed has a long history in space, beginning even before the Second World War with early rocketry, the precursor rocketry work, and coming into focus immediately after World War II with Professor Luigi Broglio and Professor Edoardo Amaldi in Rome, one in engineering and one in science. This is indeed very interesting that there has been all along a strong relationship between the engineering enterprise connected to the industrial base and the traditional excellence in physics in Italy, which has helped shape the vision of Italy in space. And this has been the key to the strong position that Italy has had in the space program. And it's at the same time the recipe to keep it strong and at the leading edge of things going forward. The industrial base spans Turin, traditionally with its strength in avionics, aeronautics, propulsion. Rome has a strong school in telecommunications, radar, and goes beyond these two centers to include most of what is the defense-related industries all over Italy, since scientific space exploration is based on the same technologies. Currently, Italy has a strong presence in providing habitation modules for the Gateway outpost. This will be an orbiting follow-up of the space station, so to speak, that will be orbiting around the moon as part of the Artemis program to bring back astronauts to the moon in this decade. And here is the connection with Samantha Cristoforetti's pursuit. She will be a good candidate, I guess.
Yeah, she might be one potential.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I know she would like to be one. Yeah, I've talked to her personally about this. I know for sure it's one of her desires.
No, definitely will be an incredible feat. Now a key area of your research deals with the topography of the surface of the seas and the distribution of surface water on Earth. In fact, you deal with the mapping of wetlands, which you indicate as a number of ecosystems where surface water is present at least part of the time. What does your work on water level say about the Earth now? How does it provide elements to evaluate the current climate crisis?
Oh, yes. I started working on the GPS reflectometry in the late 90s. And at the time, the interest was primarily on ocean surfaces. The GPS signal reflected from oceans that are wind roughened can reveal some properties of the state of the ocean, such as the wind speed and the topography. And because there are many GPS transmitters, many countries have a system of global satellites in space, right? So there are many, many reflections all over the oceans. So I focused on topography measurements because there could be a collection of a large volume of measurements in areas where the topography can be very dynamic. And so there was the promise that we could see changes over short time intervals. And at the time, this was the competitive advantage of this technique over others. Now, space-based altimetry with GPS reflections is still to this day very, very challenging to do. And that because it requires complex receiving systems to obtain accurate values. See, this ocean surface is so rough because of the presence of the winds that this diminishes the level of the reflected signal power that is collected. And this implies that to collect these signals, it becomes more expensive and more complicated to design receivers for that purpose. In contrast, water on the surface of the earth, such as in wetlands, it's typically calm. And so the reflected signal is very strong, even when water is partially obscured by vegetation. And so the system to collect these measurements can be much simpler. So then we can observe wetlands over time and quantify how they behave, whether they increase or decrease in spatial extent, how the depth of the water varies over time. Sometimes wetlands are the result of intense rainfall and subsequent flooding. And this can be monitored in the same way. And this becomes very interesting from the standpoint of looking at what happens in disastrous events such as floods. So these measurements are helpful to understand how the ecosystems of wetlands respond and how to manage water resources. Additionally, there is production of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas that increases atmospheric temperatures. And that is associated to microbial processes that occur in wetland soils under certain conditions. In fact, wetlands are the single largest source of methane production, but it has also the widest uncertainty range because we do not have reliable global catalogs of wetlands for this purpose. So my work helps create such catalogs, and from them, with work, we will be able to reduce the uncertainty in the estimate of methane production, and therefore reduce the uncertainty in prediction of future change in climate.
Well, thank you very much. You're also the president of ISSNAF, the Italian Scientists and Scholars in North America Foundation, which gathers Italian professionals working in various fields in the United States. And I really invite everyone to visit the ISSNAF website to get a sense of this important scientific network. What is the mission of ISSNAF? And why a foundation of Italian scientists and scholars in North America?
Well, ISSNAF is a non-profit organization. It was established in 2007 by 36 prominent Italian scholars all over North America. Among them, there are 4 Nobel Prize recipients. And it was born under the auspices of the Italian Embassy in Washington, D.C. The mission is to connect, empower, and celebrate the Italian intellectual diaspora in North America by connecting now more than 3,000 researchers, scholars, and technologists, representing all disciplines of research and innovation. We promote networking and cooperation in terms of cultural, scientific, academic exchanges within the community and with the public. And also we look to engaging with private organizations in North America and in Italy. We want to build a bridge between North America and Italy to best leverage our resources. We are a grassroots organization and we are all volunteers. And at the heart is our interest in leveraging our collective resources to enrich the lives of our own community, but also to do good for the benefit of both countries. So we in ISSNAF have many different stories, but we were all educated in Italy and then moved to North America, and we are at various institutions. So we all identify as Italian culturally, and yet our experience here has modified our phenotype, and it has given us a set of unique perspectives. We are all united by our desire to give back to our country of origin, not just as individuals who might be successful professionally, but also as an organization that can speak to other organizations and institutions. And thus, we think we can be more effective and impactful at building transatlantic bridges. In a sense, highways for the flow of ideas and people in either direction. And this is what we call empowering the Italian diaspora.
Can you describe some of the activities of the foundation and the role it aspires to play both in the Italian and American context? I know there are also a series of awards and both in science and the humanities. And can you tell us something more about that?
Yes. ISSNAF provides support to the newer generations of Italian researchers in North America in several ways. For example, we have the Young ISSNAF Mentorship Program for high potential early career researchers in North America. We pair them with established researchers who belong in our network to help them guide their trajectory here. It's also open to Italian students in Italy who are interested in looking for opportunities to study or work in North America and are looking for advice who might help them prepare for such experience. Additionally, we administered fellowships and internships funded by our donors to support researchers. We do have a Young Investigators Award program supported by some families who are donors of such awards in memory of their loved ones. And these are in the spirit of ISSNAF. So typically there are Italians who have done well in North America, and they have created a fellowship in memory of either their family members or ISSNAF members who have passed away, and leave a legacy in ISSNAF this way. And so we are very grateful to those in our community who think about sponsoring such good ways of supporting early career people. And we have a yearly call for these awards, and we planned to issue the call before the end of March.
Well, this is absolutely astounding in the sense that it reveals the existence of not only the intellectual diaspora that is happening over the course of the last 3 decades of a number of scholars and scientists that are moving to the United States. I guess we're 2 examples of this, but also because it reveals an active presence within the new environment, the new nation where we're called to be and serve and be fruitful. So thank you very much for this really enlightening conversation. And we discussed about the perspective of space, the impact of the Italian scientific research at NASA and in the United States, and also about the network of Italian professionals, academics, scientists, and scholars revolving around ISSNAF. It was a real pleasure chatting with you. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Again, Luca, it has been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed talking with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
And thanks everybody for listening. And I invite you to subscribe to this channel or to the newsletter on the webpage of the show at www.italianinnovators.com to receive notifications of new episodes and know more about this project. You can also follow me on social media for updates, news, and additional material, and also for receiving notification about my Italy in Philly lecture series. Thank you very much for your support. Arrivederci e alla prossima.